Hello, everyone. You're listening to Onward with Onrie Live. I'm your host, Kompan. Thanks for tuning in. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about something that is on all our minds right now, New Year's resolutions. And whether you believe in them or not, I think that declaring a resolution is a great way to make a positive change in your life. Regardless of what your New Year's resolution is, I believe that anything is attainable if you're focused on obtaining it. It may not happen within 1 year. Depending on how big your goal is, it may not happen in 10 years. But what really matters is that you're making steps in the right direction. And that's why I tend to divide my goals between long-term and short-term goals. There's nothing more empowering or motivating than checking something off your list and making those goals. And having a New Year's resolution or resolutions are a fantastic motivating spark to get you going. Now, first and foremost, I think you need to ignore the skeptics. And that just comes with the territory. Anybody who is going to roll their eyes or scoff or try and convince you that what you're trying to do is impossible, they just need to be ignored. And, you have to remind yourself that no matter how big or small your goals are, meeting them will give you the strength to persevere because you're making progress, and it's just that simple. But setting these goals requires you to be reasonable, of course. And if, for example, I wanted to become an expert guitar player and my resolution was to achieve this goal by the end of January, the likelihood of that happening overnight isn't very high because it takes years to get really good at it, and you have to really, put a lot of time into it. However, if you start playing the guitar or if I started to play the guitar and I said, I'm going to start taking lessons and I'm going to get better as time goes on, well, over time, my skills at playing the guitar will get better and I could become an expert guitar player in, say, 10 years, or 5 years or however long, however much time I can actually allocate to that goal that I have. And, setting these goals obviously requires you to be very realistic, and if you want to make now let's just take it back to comics because that's my specialty. If you want to make comics for a living, but your time to work on them is limited because you got a day job or you just don't you're in school, you just don't have the time to allocate to that. It's probably not going to happen overnight either. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a career in comics or that it's now impossible, and that's something that I think a lot of people tend to do is they put unrealistic expectations. They set unrealistic expectations for themselves, and then when they aren't met, they become discouraged because of that. And what we're going to do today is think about ways that we can work past that. And I'm going to use myself as the understudy and show you how I managed to do this with my own business, how I managed to constantly meet and surpass my own expectations by setting reasonable goals for myself. So, the idea is to set goals that don't require you to make such drastic changes to the point where you quickly decide to give up on them. And the reason why you want to avoid drastic changes is because when life throws you a curveball, it can set you off course and thus be extremely discouraging. So let's say you want to release your first comic in March and you've never done a comic before. You're going to start working on your first comic January 1st, and then suddenly the stressors in your life start acting up. And stressors can be a range of all kinds of different things. It can be someone close to you getting really sick. It could be, added pressure from work. It could be all kinds of stuff. I mean, your car could suddenly break down. You don't have the money to pay off what needs to be done on it. There are all kinds of different things that can throw you off course. You could have health problems, God forbid. Anything can happen. But just because these things occur doesn't mean that you have to give up on what you're doing or that putting it off suddenly means that you're not taking it seriously anymore. What's most important is that you focus on yourself. If you're not 100% there, it's going to show in your work. And, maybe you don't have that much time to allocate right away, but what you can do is set goals that are within your reach. And what that means is like basically start with something simple. Like, for example, if you have a day job and your time is occupied with going to work and doing all kinds of stuff, maybe set aside an hour a day for writing. And one thing I've been doing for the last 12 years now is I've been keeping a journal. Every day I write in a journal. And I haven't stopped doing it for the last 12 years. And what that does is it's just like exercise. It's like going into the gym and lifting weights. And it's, the writing version of that. I write down what thoughts I have, what kinds of things are going on, so that I have a log of what's happening in my life, and I can track my own progress, and I can strengthen my skills as a writer. And just taking that small time of the day for that one thing is a great way to keep myself on track to achieving my greater goals. So you can do that. And another thing you could do is, if you don't have time during the week, let's just say you're so busy, you got 5 kids at home, you just don't have any time for yourself, you can't even go to the bathroom without asking permission, take some time aside on the weekend. Find time for you, because this is important. Your life is not going to be full unless you are happy with what you got going on in your life. And if you're not happy, then it's time to question what you can do to change that. So, setting goals that are within your reach, I think is the most important thing, no matter what it is. Whether you're working in comics or, you or not. Anything you set your mind to, start by setting goals that are within your reach and work off of that. And once you reach those goals, then start to raise the bar a bit. And I'm just going to kind of reflect on some of the things that, some of the goals that I managed to meet in 2017 and how that is going to impact my strategy going into 2018. So this year has been one of my best performing years in working in comics. I've sold over 13,000 books this year, hand sold 13,000 books by going to conventions. I set a goal for attending 12 conventions and selling out at each of them, and I managed to do that. And the reason why I was able to do this is because I set it in my mind that I'm going to do this, but it wasn't just me saying, okay, I'm going to do this, because I don't know if it could happen or not. You set a goal and you try your best to make it, and all kinds of things could come up. And, maybe I could have gone to a convention where not as many people would have shown up, or people wouldn't have bought, or I would have brought too much product, or all kinds of different variables could have thrown off or made my goal impossible to reach. But what I did was in order to get to that point where I said I'm going to do 12 conventions and sell out at all 12 of them, is I looked back on the year before, and I went in 2016, I went to 10 conventions and I sold out at all of them. So I said, okay, if I could do 10 conventions, well, then this year I can do 12 conventions and I can sell out at all of them. So, it's about raising the bar gradually. And, another thing that managed to happen as a result of me selling all these books was I managed to get a new licensing deal, and with 2 companies in Europe and in Asia. And they just released a numismatic 2-ounce silver coin, which I'll be talking more about next week. But it's a pretty exciting time right now because it's our first licensing deal based on artwork from the Eastern Shin trilogy, which I'm really proud of. And going into 2018, my goal is now going to be to promote this coin and to keep pushing the sales of Eastern Shin. So I'm not going to be veering off very much for what I did in 2017. I'm going to just, up the ante a little bit, try and sell a few more books at shows. And there's going to be a point when things plateau, but if you can look at it and say, like, look, this is where, this is what I can do, and it's okay. It's already, I've set the bar high, and this is the most I can do. That's okay. You don't have to just keep pushing yourself to the point where you're going to burn yourself out. That's the last thing you want to do. And it's important also to take time to look back on the things that you've achieved and be happy with what you've done, because there's going to be plenty of people out there who are going to try and put you down along the way. And there's also people who don't see what it's like to be you. They're looking from the outside, and what they see from the outside is whatever you give them to see. So if I portray myself as being successful and knowing my shit and going out there and selling out at all these conventions, well, then that's how people are going to see me. And if I portray myself as being unsure of myself and not having much confidence, not knowing what I'm doing, well, then that's how people are going to see me. And it's very important to maintain the kind of image that you want people to see for you. And I think that a great way to kind of like organize those ideas in order to get yourself like on track to setting those goals is to divide them between long-term and short-term goals. So as the year is ending now, what I'm doing is I'm setting up my long-term goals for the year, and I try and set up what I set up is like what is on my agenda. So right now on my agenda, I have to reprint the first Easton Shin graphic novel because it's about to go out of print. We've sold through almost everything. So that's my biggest goal for 2018 is making sure that gets out there. And then I'm going to be doing another crowdfunding campaign to pay off the printing costs for the next single issue of Easton Shin, and making sure that I have enough money to produce that book, planning out my conventions, making sure that I can still sell out at all those conventions, and promoting the coin and trying to see if there's other opportunities, see if there's something else I can do that can bring Easton Shin to the next level in terms of licensing. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's really about who approaches you, because to be honest with you, when I first started working on Easton Shin, I never imagined that anybody would come up to me and say, hey, we want to make a coin with artwork from your book on it. That was totally unexpected, and something else may be out there or it may not be. And you can't force these things either. Like, let's say I want to make a toy of Easton Shin. I could do it out of pocket, but that's going to cost me a lot of money. So what I really want is for someone else to come to me, and I want them to offer me a deal. And I can want is all I want, but the chances of it happening are not very likely unless I continue to grow and push what I've been currently doing with Easton Shin. So it's important for me to stay on course with making sure that when I go to conventions, I give my top performance, and I continue to sell out and do what I set out to do. So if you're interested in setting up a goal for yourself or setting up some sort of idea of what you want to do, here's something you can work on. And if you're listening, I want you to take some time and make 2 lists. And on these lists, put a short-term goal. And a short-term goal is something you do on a weekly basis. So like I was saying earlier, if you're doing like the 20 minutes of writing a day, that's a short-term goal. That's something you're going to be doing and implementing into your weekly schedule or your daily schedule, whatever it is. And then think about all the other things you need to do. And I always, every Sunday, what I do is I plan out my week, and I sit down and I have at least 15 tasks that I need to complete every week. And it can be a range of anything. It could be making sure that production is moving along, making sure that bills are getting paid, making sure that I make appointments, setting the meetings with the people I need to talk to. All those things are very important. So I would classify that as your short-term goals, and then look at your long-term goals. Look at what you're really trying to do, and set the goals that you can put in place that you can achieve within a reasonable amount of time. So when I say long-term, there's the ultimate objective, which is like what you see yourself ultimately doing with whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Like, for example, if let's say you're a chef and you want to open up a restaurant, but you don't have money and you're working at a restaurant, you need to kind of learn the business first before you get to that point. So, you might be working as a chef for a couple of years, but at least if you're working as a chef, you're already making those steps to get to where you want to be, which is owning your own restaurant. So, and the same thing applies to comics. So my ultimate goal is to make Easton Shin a brand that is as recognized as Game of Thrones or Star Wars. So I have to make sure that everything I'm doing as the years progress, helped me take the next step to getting there. So those my long-term goals are all those big steps that need to be made in order to help me reach that ultimate goal. And that takes time and perseverance, and it's something that you can do if you put your mind to it. And make sure that you reach out to people that who you trust and consult with them, and make sure you have a support system. I think that's a really big deal, and I'm very fortunate in the sense that I have a really close circle of friends and family that I can come to for help when I need it. And I think that's definitely gotten me to where I am. And once you have that circle of people looking at you, and also my fans, everybody who's reading Yi Shin, they're a huge inspiration to me. They encourage me to keep going and doing what I'm doing. So when you have that, it gives you the energy to keep pushing forward and moving onward. So that's about all the time we got for today. So if you have any questions or you want to talk about this a little bit more, send me a message, shoot me an email, olkompan@gmail.com, or you can message me on Facebook. Next week, I'm hoping that I'll actually have the real coin here and I'll be able to show it to you guys and talk about some other things that we got going on. It's going to be a brand new year, lots of wonderful things going on. Can't wait to see you then. Until then, have a wonderful new year. Surround yourself with all the people you care about, and just have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you next year. Thanks for tuning in. Onward to victory.